In this video, we're going to run through downloading your project work from CodePen and opening it up in a text editor so that you can author your work locally on your own computer. CodePen is a great tool for experimentation, testing, sharing our work, but at some stage we need to get that work get that code that we've made, HTML and CSS, save it as HTML and CSS files. We might need to edit those files locally, but at some stage we will be publishing those files to the internet for our audiences to view. So let's have a look at how we might do that. I'm in CodePen at the moment, and I've got a project open that I've been working on. I've got it to a certain point. Now I want to download it, continue to work on it in my own authoring environment. So it's pretty easy to do that. CodePen gives a really good kind of exporting tool that helps us to fluidly grab our work. All we need to do is come down to the embed button down here on the bottom right of the browser and click on that. Oh, sorry, not embed, export. And we're going to export a zip file. When I click on export zip, what CodePen is going to do is it's going to copy all this HTML, CSS code into and write HTML and CSS file, package that up in a zip, and I'll be able to access that in my downloads folder. Alright, so that's downloaded, and I'll show that in my Finder. So there I've got my zip folder, and I might just quickly hide that and grab it out of my downloads folder and pop it on the desktop. Might be easier to kind of consider it there. So that's what I've exported from CodePen, and I'll unzip that. We'll have a look at what CodePen's provided us. So a couple of licensing files there that we can have a look at, but also ignore, and then two folders of files. You can see I've got an index and a CSS file in the source folder, and I've got an index and a CSS file in the distribution folder, dist folder. So the source folder files are everything that you wrote in your CodePen. Let me just flick back to CodePen for a sec. So when we're writing HTML in CodePen, we don't need to add quite a bit of the HTML structure. We don't need to add a doc type. We don't need to add HTML tags or head tags or body tags. And we're just writing our content or marking up our content, styling our content. So when we download that work from CodePen, it gives us an exact copy in the source folder of what we've written in a HTML file and a CSS file and a JavaScript file if you've written any JavaScript. But in the dist folder, it actually gives you the full HTML. So it adds in the doc type that you need, the HTML body tags, and it also links the CSS file to the index file, which is quite handy. So this is in the dist folder. This is kind of what we want to continue working with, really. And what we've got here is really just some text files. You can see in the preview here that that's really just text. And text can be HTML, CSS, and TXT files. Raw text can be opened in any text editor, edited, resaved, and those updates will carry through. What we need to do to kind of show our web page that we've been working on is open that index file, that HTML file, into a browser window. So let me just do that. I'll go over to my browser, open a new tab, and I'll file open a file, navigate to my desktop, go into the dist folder and open up that HTML file and open it up, and there you can see there's my my web page that I've been working on in CodePen. And really that's what's happening when you access a website on the internet. You're navigating to a public server and you're opening up a HTML file, and then that HTML and CSS is rendered in your browser window like so. And that the browser is rendering that plain text. So we can edit this in any plain text editor. For example, on the Mac I've got text edit, and there might be Notepad on your PC, and I can open up that into text edit, and you can see here that I've got my raw code, my raw markup, and I can make alterations to that just here in text edit, and then file, save that file, and that any changes that I make to that raw text will update when I then go and render that HTML in a browser window. So text edit, while you can do your editing, you can edit your HTML in text edit, it's quite a raw experience, and you'll remember in CodePen you've got like text hinting and other kinds of bits of functionality in that text editor that help you out. There are other kind of text editors that are specialty pieces of software for writing code. There's heaps of them around, and they're kind of a better markup experience than text edit. So there's a bunch of them. I've previously used Brackets before. Brackets has been discontinued by Adobe, but there's a bunch of them. There's an infinite amount of code editor, text editors that you could use. For example, there's a piece of software called Atom. There's Sublime. There's TextMate. There's Coda, and you could use any one of those. And essentially, they're very, they have very similar functionality. What they do is allow you to write code and then preview the work that you've been working on. Some of them have different kind of functionality around text hinting, text editing, and how you browse files. But by and large, they do the same thing. I'm going to have a look at one of them today, which is the Microsoft product called Visual Studio Code. Feel free to use that tool, but you can use any text editor that you want to. You can download Visual Studio Code at this URL, download the Mac version, or indeed whatever platform you're on. I've downloaded that to my downloads folder, and I'm going to install that. It's just on a Mac, it's just a matter of unzipping that file and then dropping the application into the applications folder. I mean, I'm not even sure you need to do that, but I will. And I'll open up that application. Okay, so this is what you'll more or less see when you open up Visual Studio Code Editor for the first time. You might actually see a different welcome message, and the interface might look slightly different because we can customize all of our text editors in various ways. If I go and have a look at the preferences in Visual Studio and go to color theme, I've chosen the light default. I think by default it's the dark one. I find that a bit difficult to read, so I flipped it around. I might just continue in the dark code editor. Really what a text editor allows you to do is browse files and open files and edit files, and also probably preview files. Let's open up our project that we've downloaded from CodePen and make some modifications. Over on the left-hand side here, we've got the Explorer, and if I open up that little tab there, I can open a folder. So in this area, I want to open up my kind of root folder, the folder of files that I'm working on. So I'm going to navigate to where I left those files, and it was in the dist folder. So I'm going to open up the dist folder and open up this work here. And if I close that little welcome tab and click on, you can see here that there's the folder and the kind of link tree. This is the different files that are in that root folder. If I click on that, you can see my code ready to edit. So there's some nice bits of functionality here. Well, first of all, let's notice that CodePen, when I downloaded my work from CodePen's, added quite a few tags here. Added that HTML structure, the doc type, the HTML tag. It's added a head tag, and it's got the link to my CSS style sheet there. And what else has it done? Finished off the body in HTML down here. You can see that it shows us the opening and closing tags, which is really good for troubleshooting. A lot of text editors do have functionality like that, but that works quite well in Visual Studio. Now let's make an edit. So I can come down to any of these, or anywhere, and I'm going to add another paragraph of text in here. And you see there that when I added that in, automatically closed off that tag, which is really handy. So I've made a change, and all I need to do to update that change is go File, Save. Now in Visual Studio and a lot of code editors, there's going to be a lot of functionality that we don't need to use when we're starting off, and that's definitely the case in Visual Studio. We're really going to be looking at the files that we're working with, moving between those different files. So if you can see that if I click between those files, I can open up my CSS, edit my CSS, go back to my HTML, I believe, and then so they're tabbed there, so we can click between them, and I think we can also even see both of them open at the same time, which is really good. Now let's make sure I might just close that, make sure we have our HTML selected, and we want to view that. Now to do that, I think we go to the Run and Debug. So we'll click on Run and Debug and click the Run button, and then we should get an option to open that in Chrome. So let's do that. And now we can see our project rendered in a browser, and you can see that I've added some content in there. I made a change, saved that and updated it. Close that off. Now, just very quickly, if you want to continue using Visual Studio, you might want a live preview, kind of like what we had in CodePen, where we're writing, we can see that update on the right-hand side. To do that, we're going to have to add in an extension to Visual Studio, which is pretty easy. Let's go up to Preferences and go to Extensions. And what is the extension called? It is called, I think it's called Live Share. I might just pause and just check that. Actually, it's called Live Server. You can see Live Server. Okay, now I've already installed Live Server. If you haven't installed it, you just would be pressing on the install button there, and it should be up and running. Let's go back to our page and debug terminal open. If I want to kind of have a live preview, with that extension installed, I can right click on the file that I want to live serve, and I can click on that and it should open a tab for us to have a look at. And so I can have those two, I can have Visual Studio open and Chrome open at the same time, and I can make adjustments to my code here. And when I hit save, Command S on the Mac, you can see it automatically updates there, so we can see our work on the fly, so to speak. Okay, so that is a run through of downloading our work from CodePen, where we like to kind of test things out and experiment, bringing it down to our local machines and setting up a local authoring environment. In this case, I'm using Visual Studio, but of course you can use any text editor that you want, Atom, Sublime, TextMate, Coda. There's a bunch of them out there that have very similar functionality and do the same thing. Essentially, we're editing raw text and then we're previewing that raw text, which is HTML, in a browser.